The emergency klaxons screamed across the bridge of the UES horizon as Captain Sarah Chen gripped her command chair. Through the massive viewport, a sight that had haunted humanity's nightmares for 3 years filled their vision. The Draconis warship emerged from hyperspace like death itself, its obsidian hull stretching nearly 2 kilometers in length. Crystalline spines jutted from its surface, pulsing with the sickly green energy that could tear through human shields like paper. "All hands to battle stations," Chen commanded, though her voice carried little hope. The crew moved with practiced efficiency born from desperation rather than confidence. Everyone knew the statistics. In 47 encounters with Draconis vessels, humanity had achieved exactly 0 victories. The best they could hope for was to damage the enemy enough that some escape pods might reach friendly space. Lieutenant Marcus Rivera, the ship's tactical officer, turned from his console with sweat beading on his forehead. "Captain, it's one of their Apex-class dreadnoughts, the same type that destroyed the Mars Defense Fleet." His hands trembled slightly as he spoke. Rivera had been one of only 12 survivors from that massacre, pulled from the wreckage of his previous ship after floating in space for 18 hours. The Draconis were everything humanity feared about the universe. They stood 3 meters tall, their scaled hides impervious to most human weapons. Their ships were living creatures as much as machines, grown rather than built, capable of self-repair and equipped with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Worst of all, they showed no interest in communication, negotiation, or mercy. They simply appeared, destroyed everything human in their path, and moved on. "Incoming transmission," Communications Officer Kelly Park announced, her voice tight with stress. "It's not from the Draconis ship. It's from Sector 7, the civilian evacuation route." Chen's blood ran cold. Sector 7 was supposed to be empty, cleared of all human presence 3 days ago. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the desperate face of Captain James Morrison from the Civilian Transport Sanctuary. Behind him, the bridge was chaos as crew members struggled with damaged systems. "Horizon, thank God you're here. Our hyperdrive failed during evacuation. We've got 800 civilians aboard, mostly families from the Kepler colonies." "Morrison, you need to get out of here now," Chen replied urgently. "We have a Draconis Apex class bearing down on us. Your ship can't withstand even a glancing blow from their weapons." "Our engines are dead," Morrison replied, his face grim. "We're sitting ducks. Sarah, most of these people are children, families who trusted us to get them to safety." Chen closed her eyes for a moment, making the calculation every military commander dreaded. The Horizon was humanity's newest destroyer, equipped with experimental quantum torpedoes and the most advanced shield generators Earth could produce. It might last 15 minutes against the Draconis ship. The civilian transport would be destroyed in seconds. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's intercom. "We're positioning ourselves between the enemy and the civilian transport. Our job is to buy them time for repairs. Every second we hold this line means 800 lives have a chance to see tomorrow." The Draconis vessel continued its approach, its biomechanical hull shifting and adapting as weapon ports opened like hungry mouths. Long-range sensors detected the characteristic energy buildup of their plasma cannons, weapons that could reduce a city block to vapor. The alien ship moved with predatory grace, taking its time. It knew its prey couldn't escape. "Distance to target, 200,000 kilometers and closing," Rivera reported. "Their weapons are charging, multiple signatures. Captain, they're preparing for a full barrage. Our shields won't hold against that kind of firepower." On the civilian transport, emergency crews worked frantically to repair their damaged hyperdrive. Children cried in the passenger compartments as parents tried to comfort them, many of the adults knowing full well what a Draconis attack meant. They had all heard the stories from the outer colonies, the recordings that cut off mid-transmission, the rescue ships that found nothing but debris fields. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the sanctuary's chief medical officer, moved through the passenger sections checking on the families. In one of the smaller compartments, she found a sight that stopped her cold. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, sat calmly in her seat, while her mother sobbed quietly beside her. The child had her face pressed against the small porthole, staring out at the massive alien warship approaching them. "Sweetie, come away from the window," Dr. Vasquez said gently, kneeling beside the girl. "What's your name?" "Emily," the child replied without looking away from the porthole. "That's not a bad ship, you know. Everyone thinks it is, but they're wrong." Dr. Vasquez exchanged a concerned glance with Emily's mother. The stress of evacuation affected children in strange ways, sometimes causing them to retreat into fantasy. "Emily, that ship belongs to aliens who want to hurt us. You need to stay away from the window." But Emily shook her head firmly. "No, Dr. Vasquez. I know what everyone says about the dragons, but they're not evil. They're just scared and angry because people took something very important from them. The absurdity of a 7-year-old lecturing adults about interstellar politics might have been amusing under different circumstances." Dr. Vasquez was about to respond when Emily's mother, Janet, grabbed her arm. "She's been saying things like this for weeks," Janet whispered urgently. "Ever since the evacuation started. Strange things about the aliens, things a child couldn't possibly know. She draws pictures of them, but not as monsters. She draws them like they're sad." On the Horizon's bridge, the tactical situation continued to deteriorate. The Draconis ship had closed to within 100,000 kilometers and showed no signs of slowing. Long-range scanners detected additional energy signatures, suggesting the alien vessel was preparing multiple weapon systems for firing. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command," Park announced. "Admiral Williams wants to speak with you directly." The holographic display shifted to show the weathered face of Admiral Patricia Williams, the woman who had been leading humanity's desperate defense against the Draconis incursions. Behind her, the walls of the underground command bunker showed the strain of 3 years of constant warfare. "Sarah, you're ordered to withdraw immediately," Williams said without preamble. "We can't afford to lose the Horizon and her crew. The civilian transport is a regrettable loss, but we need every warship for the defense of Earth." Chen felt her jaw tighten. She had known Admiral Williams for 15 years, had served under her command during the colonial expansion period. The woman giving this order wasn't the same leader who had once told Chen that protecting civilians was the only thing that separated them from the monsters they fought. "Admiral, we're talking about 800 innocent people," Chen replied carefully. "Men, women, and children who trusted us to protect them. And I'm talking about the survival of our entire species," Williams snapped back. "The Draconis are massing for a final assault on Earth. Every analysis shows they'll move within the next 6 months. We need the Horizon and every other ship we have for that battle." The connection ended abruptly, leaving Chen staring at the blank display. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders, their faces reflecting the terrible choice their captain faced. "Follow orders and abandon 800 civilians to certain death, or disobey direct commands and likely doom both ships." "Captain," Rivera called out, his voice tight with urgency, "the Draconis ship is firing." The alien vessel unleashed its first salvo, streams of plasma energy racing across space toward the human ships. Chen watched the tactical display as the weapons approached, knowing that everything they had fought for, everything they believed in, would be decided in the next few seconds. The plasma bolt struck the Horizon's shields with tremendous force, causing the entire ship to shudder. Emergency lighting flickered as power systems struggled to compensate for the massive energy drain. Damage reports flooded in from across the vessel as the crew fought to maintain combat effectiveness. "Shields down to 60%, reported Chief Engineer Tom Walsh over the intercom. "That was just their opening salvo. If they hit us with full power, we'll be debris in minutes." But something strange was happening aboard the civilian transport. Emily had somehow made her way to one of the observation lounges, a larger area with floor-to-ceiling transparasteel windows. She stood there alone, her small hands pressed against the clear material, staring directly at the approaching Draconis warship. "There you are," Dr. Vasquez said as she found the child. "Emily, you can't be here. It's not safe." But Emily didn't move. Instead, she began speaking in a language that sounded nothing like any human dialect Dr. Vasquez had ever heard. The words seemed to flow and shift, almost musical in their complexity. As the child spoke, something impossible happened. The Draconis ship stopped firing. For the first time in 3 years of warfare, a Draconis vessel ceased its attack on human targets while they were still intact. On the horizon's bridge, confused voices filled the air as sensor operators tried to understand what they were seeing. "Captain, the alien ship has stopped its approach," Rivera reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "All weapon systems appear to be powering down. This is impossible." Chen stared at the tactical display, watching as the massive alien warship simply hung motionless in space. Nothing in any of their intelligence reports had suggested the Draconis were capable of restraint once they began an attack. They fought until either they or their enemies were destroyed, no exceptions. "Are they experiencing some kind of system failure?" Chen asked. "Negative," Rivera replied after checking his instruments. "Their power signatures are stable. They're maintaining position deliberately." What Captain Chen didn't know was that aboard the Draconis V, the silence in space was deafening. 3 ships hung motionless in the void, locked in a tableau that defied everything humanity thought they knew about their enemy. Captain Chen found herself holding her breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the Draconis vessel to resume its attack with even greater fury. But the alien ship remained still, its biomechanical hull no longer pulsing with aggressive energy. Instead, something that looked almost like confusion seemed to radiate from its organic components. The weapon ports that had been opening like hungry mouths slowly closed, and the ship's posture shifted from predatory to something that Chen's military training had no words to describe. Aboard the civilian transport sanctuary, Dr. Vasquez knelt beside Emily, her medical scanner showing readings that made no sense. The child's brain activity was off the charts, showing patterns that suggested she was somehow processing and transmitting information at impossible speeds. Yet Emily herself seemed perfectly calm, still speaking in that strange, flowing language while gazing at the alien warship. "Emily, sweetheart, what are you saying?" Dr. Vasquez asked gently, though she wasn't sure the child could even hear her anymore. Emily's mother, Janet, had found them in the observation lounge, and she sank to her knees beside her daughter. "She's been having dreams," Janet whispered to Dr. Vasquez. "For months, even before the evacuation started. Dreams about a man with scales who was crying. She kept saying he lost his little girl and couldn't find her." The implications of Janet's words hit Dr. Vasquez like a physical blow. 3 years ago, when the first Draconis ship had appeared in human space, it had emerged near the archaeological dig on Kepler 442b. The dig where Dr. Marcus Webb's team had been studying artifacts from an unknown civilization. The dig where Emily and her family had been living. "Janet, what exactly was your husband working on at the dig site?" Dr. Vasquez asked urgently. "Marcus found some kind of stasis chamber," Janet replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was damaged, had been breached centuries ago, but there were genetic samples inside. Preserved biological material from whatever species built that facility. He was trying to understand their biology, their culture." Dr. Vasquez felt the pieces of an impossible puzzle beginning to form. The first Draconis attack had been on Kepler 442b, where they had systematically destroyed the archaeological site, but left the human settlement largely untouched. At the time, everyone assumed it was random alien aggression. But what if it wasn't random at all? The samples, Dr. Vasquez said slowly. What happened to the biological samples? Janet's face went pale. There was an accident in the lab, just a few days before the attack. Some kind of energy discharge. Marcus said it was like the samples were trying to communicate with something. Emily was in the lab when it happened. She was helping her father catalog artifacts like she always did. On the Horizon's bridge, Captain Chen was receiving reports that challenged everything they understood about Draconis technology. Chief Science Officer Dr. Amanda Foster had been monitoring the alien ship's emissions, and her findings were unprecedented. Captain, this is impossible, but I'm detecting what appears to be emotional resonance in the ship's bio-neural networks, Dr. Foster reported, her voice filled with scientific wonder and fear. The ship isn't just a vessel, it's a living extension of its commander's consciousness. And right now, that consciousness is experiencing what can only be described as profound grief. Chen stared at the data streaming across Dr. Foster's workstation. You're saying the ship is feeling emotions? More than that, Foster replied, her fingers flying over her controls. I'm detecting quantum entanglement patterns between the ship and something on the civilian transport. Captain, I think something or someone on that ship is communicating with the Draconis commander on a level we never imagined possible. The realization hit Chen like lightning. She opened a channel to the sanctuary. Captain Morrison, I need you to check your passenger manifest. Is there anyone aboard your ship who might have had contact with Draconis technology or artifacts? Morrison's response was immediate. Dr. Marcus Webb's family is aboard. He led the archaeological team on Kepler 442b before the first attack. His wife Janet and daughter Emily evacuated with us. Chen felt the universe shift around her. Where is the child now? Observation Lounge 7, Morrison replied. Our medical officer is with her. Captain, the girl has been acting strangely since we left port. She keeps talking about aliens as if she knows them personally. Chen was already moving, leaving the bridge in Rivera's capable hands. As she made her way through the ship's corridors, her mind raced through the implications. If Emily Webb had somehow been exposed to Draconis genetic material or technology, if she had formed some kind of connection with their species, then everything humanity thought they knew about this war was wrong. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Draconis warship, Commander Thrax the World Ender stood before the sacred memory crystals that contained the history of his people. These crystals had remained sealed since the Great Mourning began, when the Draconis had lost their most precious treasure and turned their grief into an engine of war. The voice speaking in the old tongue continued to reach him across space, and with each word, more memories surfaced. Memories of a time before the rage, before the endless hunt for vengeance. Memories of his daughter, Zarathis, who had been taken from him centuries ago by raiders who sought to sell Draconis genetic material to the highest bidder. Thrax had spent 300 years believing his daughter was dead, killed by those who had stolen her from their homeworld. The raiders' ship had been destroyed in the pursuit, and with it, any hope of recovery. The loss had broken something fundamental in Draconis society. They had turned their backs on their peaceful nature and embraced warfare as their only remaining purpose. But the voice calling to him now carried genetic markers that were impossible to ignore. Somehow, impossibly, a fragment of his daughter's essence survived in the small human child who spoke words of love and loss in the sacred tongue of his people. Dr. Vasquez watched in amazement as Emily continued her one-sided conversation with the alien ship. The child's words had taken on an urgent quality, as if she was trying to explain something vital. Around them, the sanctuary's crew worked frantically to repair their damaged hyperdrive, but their progress was slow. Emily, Dr. Vasquez said softly, can you tell me what you're saying to them? For the first time since the encounter began, Emily looked away from the alien ship and met Dr. Vasquez's eyes. What the doctor saw there took her breath away. This wasn't the gaze of a 7-year-old child, but something infinitely older and sadder. "I'm telling him that I remember now," Emily said in perfect, unaccented English. "I remember the ship that took me away and the pain when they hurt me to take my blood. I remember the laboratory where they kept me and how scared I was. But I also remember that he never stopped looking for me." Emily turned back to the viewport, her small hands pressed against the transparent steel. "I'm telling him that I found a new family who loves me and that I don't want anyone to be hurt anymore. The humans didn't know they were taking his daughter's DNA. They thought they were just studying old artifacts." The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place with terrifying clarity. Dr. Vasquez realized that the stasis chamber Dr. Webb had found wasn't from some ancient civilization. It was a prison, a holding cell where raiders had kept a young Draconis princess before attempting to sell her genetic material. Emily had been exposed to those DNA samples in the lab accident, and somehow they had integrated with her human genetics. She was both human and Draconis, carrying the memories and emotional imprint of Thrax's lost daughter, while remaining fundamentally the Earth child her parents had raised and loved. Captain Chen arrived at the observation lounge just as Emily began speaking again, this time switching between the alien language and English so the humans could understand. "Father, I know you're angry," Emily said, her young voice carrying impossible weight. "I know you've been hurting for so long that you forgot what love felt like. But these people aren't the ones who took me. They found what was left of me by accident, and they gave me a new life with a family who cherishes me." On the Draconis warship, Thrax felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: hope. The genetic patterns were unmistakable. This child carried the essence of his beloved Zarathis, but she had been changed, transformed by integration with human DNA. She was his daughter, and yet something new, something unprecedented. "I know you want revenge," Emily continued, tears now streaming down her face. "I can feel your pain, and I understand it. But if you destroy these ships, you'll be destroying me too, and then we'll both be lost forever." The silence that followed seemed to stretch across eternity. What happened next would be remembered as the moment when everything changed, not just for the 3 ships hanging in space, but for 2 entire civilizations that had been locked in a war born from misunderstanding and grief. Emily closed her eyes and began to speak again. But this time her words carried a different quality. She wasn't just translating between languages anymore. She was building a bridge between 2 completely different ways of thinking and communicating. Her human upbringing had taught her concepts of forgiveness, second chances, and healing that her Draconis genetic memories had never known. "Tell them about mercy," Emily whispered to the alien ship, her voice somehow carrying across the vacuum of space through quantum entanglement patterns that science was only beginning to understand. "Tell them about the humans who found a scared little girl in a laboratory and chose to love her instead of studying her. Tell them about mothers who sing lullabies and fathers who read bedtime stories." On the Draconis warship, Commander Thrax felt his daughter's words flowing through his consciousness like healing water on ancient wounds. But they brought with them concepts that his warrior culture had abandoned centuries ago. The idea that strength could come from choosing not to fight, that victory might be found in understanding rather than conquest, these were thoughts that challenged everything the Draconis had become. Captain Chen watched in fascination as the alien ship's bioluminescent patterns began to shift and change. Dr. Foster's analysis showed that the vessel was actually reconfiguring its neural pathways, learning new ways to process and express information. It was quite literally remembering how to be something other than a weapon of war. "Captain," Morrison's voice came through the communication system from the sanctuary. "Our hyperdrive repairs are nearly complete, but I'm not sure we should leave. This child, Emily, she seems to be facilitating something that could change everything. Chen nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. Continue your repairs, but don't engage the drive unless I give the order. We're witnessing something that could end this war, and we can't risk interrupting the process. Dr. Vasquez knelt beside Emily, monitoring the child's vital signs with growing concern. The girl's brain activity was operating at levels that should have been impossible for a human nervous system to sustain. Yet Emily seemed peaceful, even joyful, as she continued her impossible conversation with the alien commander. "I can feel him changing," Emily told Dr. Vasquez without opening her eyes. "The anger is like a heavy coat he's been wearing for so long that he forgot he could take it off. But underneath, he's just a father who missed his daughter." The little girl's words were having an effect that rippled far beyond the immediate area. The Draconis warship began transmitting new signals, reaching out across interstellar space to contact other vessels of their fleet. For the first time in 3 centuries, a Draconis commander was sending messages of something other than war coordinates and attack plans. Thrax was sharing his daughter's words with the Draconis High Council, broadcasting her concepts of peace and understanding to military leaders who had known nothing but conflict for generations. The reaction was immediate and profound. Some commanders responded with confusion, others with anger at this apparent weakness, but many began to question the endless cycle of violence that had consumed their civilization. "The other ships are responding," Dr. Foster reported from the Horizon's bridge, her voice filled with amazement. "I'm detecting similar bioluminescent communication patterns from at least 12 other Draconis vessels across this sector. Whatever's happening here, it's spreading." Emily opened her eyes and looked directly at Captain Chen. "He wants to meet with you. Not to fight, but to talk. Really talk about how to stop all the hurting on both sides." The request was unprecedented. No human had ever had peaceful contact with a Draconis being. Their species communicated through bioneural interfaces that were completely incompatible with human technology. But Emily had changed the equation, serving as a living translator capable of bridging not just languages, but entire ways of thinking. "Emily, would you be willing to help us communicate with him?" Chen asked gently. "I know this is asking a lot of you, but you might be the key to ending a war that's cost millions of lives." The 7-year-old girl nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of responsibility being placed on her young shoulders. "I can do it, but we need to hurry. The connection is making me very tired, and some of the other dragon commanders are getting scared. They think Father is being controlled by human mind tricks." Chen made a decision that would echo through history. "Morrison, prepare a shuttle bay. We're going to attempt the first peaceful meeting between humans and Draconis. Emily, I need you to tell the commander that a small group of us want to come aboard his ship to talk." The response from the alien vessel was immediate. The Draconis warship began reconfiguring its hull, creating what appeared to be a docking port specifically designed to accommodate human shuttlecraft. The level of real-time biological engineering required for such a modification was staggering, demonstrating technological capabilities far beyond anything humanity had imagined. Dr. Vasquez insisted on accompanying the diplomatic party, both to monitor Emily's condition and because her medical training might be crucial in understanding Draconis biology. Captain Chen selected herself, Emily, Dr. Vasquez, and Lieutenant Rivera to make the journey, reasoning that a small group would seem less threatening to the aliens. As their shuttle approached the Draconis vessel, Chen couldn't help but marvel at the organic beauty of the alien ship. Up close, it was clear that calling it a ship was inadequate. It was a living creature, its hull breathing and shifting with each heartbeat of its massive bioneural core. Crystalline spines that had once seemed threatening now appeared more like the dorsal fins of some great space whale. The docking process was unlike anything in human experience. Rather than mechanical clamps and airlocks, the alien ship essentially absorbed their shuttle, surrounding it with living tissue that formed a perfect environmental seal. Emergency lighting gave way to a soft, bioluminescent glow that pulsed in rhythm with Emily's heartbeat. "It recognizes me," Emily whispered in wonder as they disembarked. "The whole ship knows who I am." The corridors they walked through were more like arteries than hallways, with walls that seemed to respond to their presence. The alien ship was guiding them, creating passages and adjusting its internal structure to accommodate their human physiology. The air was breathable, though it carried strange scents that spoke of an entirely different evolutionary history. They found Commander Thrax waiting in what could only be described as a garden chamber. The space was filled with crystalline trees and bioluminescent flowers that created patterns of light and shadow unlike anything on Earth. The Draconis commander himself stood 3 meters tall, his scaled hide showing intricate patterns that shifted color with his emotional state. But it was his eyes that struck Chen most powerfully. She had expected to see the predatory gaze of humanity's greatest enemy. Instead, she saw ancient sadness, profound weariness, and something that looked remarkably like hope. Emily walked forward without fear, stopping just meters from the towering alien. When she spoke, her words somehow reached every being present simultaneously, translated through quantum consciousness in ways that bypassed the need for technology. "Father, these are my human family and friends. They helped raise me and love me. Captain Chen is a protector like you. Dr. Vasquez takes care of people when they're hurt. Lieutenant Rivera fights to keep people safe. They're good people who want to understand." Thrax knelt, bringing his massive form closer to Emily's eye level. When he spoke, his voice resonated through harmonic frequencies that Emily's unique physiology could translate for the humans. "Little star of my heart," he said, the alien words somehow conveying emotions that no human language could capture. "I have searched the galaxy for you, leaving destruction in my wake. I turned my people into weapons because I could not bear the pain of losing you. But now I see that in my rage, I nearly destroyed the very innocence and hope that made you precious." Emily reached out and placed her small hand against the alien commander's scaled face. "I know, Father. I felt your pain across all those years. But I also learned about forgiveness from my human parents. I learned that love is stronger than anger, and that healing is more powerful than revenge." The little girl turned to Captain Chen, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "He wants to know if humans can forgive, if we can find a way to heal the hurt between our peoples. The war started because bad people took something precious, but it continued because both sides forgot how to trust." Chen felt the weight of speaking for her entire species, but she also felt the hope that Emily had kindled. "Commander Thrax, humanity has made mistakes. We've acted out of fear and ignorance, but we're capable of learning, of growing, of choosing peace over conflict when given the chance." What followed was the most important conversation in human history. Through Emily's translation, 2 species began to understand each other for the first time. The Draconis learned that humans were capable of compassion, sacrifice, and love. Humans discovered that the fearsome aliens were driven by grief and loss rather than innate evil. Thrax explained how his daughter had been taken by interstellar pirates who sold rare genetic material to research facilities across the galaxy. The Draconis had tracked down every buyer, every laboratory, destroying them all in their quest to find Zarathis. When they reached Kepler 442b and found the archaeological dig, they assumed the humans were the latest buyers in the chain of exploitation. Chen shared humanity's side of the story, explaining how Dr. Webb's team had found what they believed to be ancient artifacts, never realizing they were interfering with a father's desperate search for his lost child. The misunderstanding had cost millions of lives on both sides. Emily listened to both accounts, her young face grave with understanding beyond her years. "The hurt stops here," she declared with startling authority. "I remember being Zarathis, and I love my father, but I'm also Emily Webb, and I love my human family. I don't want to choose between them anymore." She looked at both Captain Chen and Commander Thrax. "You have to promise me. Promise that you'll work together to fix the broken things between your peoples. Promise that other children won't grow up afraid of the stars because the adults couldn't figure out how to talk instead of fight." The promise was given by both leaders, and in that moment, everything changed. The war that had consumed two civilizations began to transform into something unprecedented. A genuine alliance built on understanding, forgiveness, and the bridge of love represented by one remarkable child. Emily smiled, and in that smile, both human and Draconis could see the future they were choosing to build together. A future where differences were celebrated rather than feared, where loss could be healed rather than avenged, and where a little girl's love could indeed change the galaxy. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter as two species took their first steps toward a peace that would endure for generations to come. Eyes that had been locked in deadly warfare watched and waited as a father processed the impossible return of his child and the realization that his quest for vengeance might destroy the very thing he had been trying to reclaim. Slowly, deliberately, the Draconis warship began to change. Its aggressive posture shifted as weapon systems powered down completely. Bioluminescent patterns appeared along its hull, patterns that Dr. Foster's instruments identified as communication protocols rather than weapons signatures. "Captain?" Rivera's voice crackled over Chen's communicator. "The alien ship is transmitting. It's not in any language our computers can translate, but the patterns suggest they're trying to establish peaceful contact." Chen looked at Emily, seeing the exhausted child rather than the impossible bridge between species. "Emily, can you understand what they're saying now?" Emily nodded slowly, wiping tears from her eyes. "He wants to talk, really talk, not just feel. But he doesn't know how. His people haven't tried to communicate with anyone in so long that they've forgotten how to do anything except fight." The little girl pressed her forehead against the viewport, her breath fogging the transparistile. "He's asking if I can help him remember how to speak words of peace instead of war." Cell. Something unprecedented was happening. The ship's commander, an ancient being known as Thrax the World Ender, stood motionless in the center of his command chamber. His massive form trembled as impossible words reached his mind across the void of space. The words were in the old tongue, the sacred language of his people that had been forbidden for centuries. Words that carried the accent and inflection of the lost royal bloodline. Words that spoke of sorrow, of loss, of a father's love echoing across the stars. For the first time in over 300 years, Thrax began to remember what he had been before the rage consumed him.